for this conversation, which is legacy builders. So today we have the privilege to talk to Dr. Parris, Carter.
All right.
So Dr. Carter, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Well, hello, hello. It's good to see you, Dr. Cross. It is excited. I am excited to be here.
Man, it's a pleasure, having you here to have this discussion, have this conversation on legacy builders, and what we need to do, especially as Black men, to make a difference. But before we get into the conversation, for the listeners who are here tuning in, my name is Richard A. Cross, Dr. Richard A. Cross, and we want you to please share this conversation with your connection. I can guarantee you, you will learn something from this. And you don't want to be selfish. You want to share the knowledge
Yeah.
with your connection,
Yeah.
because that's what it's about. It's about sharing the knowledge, our insights, and perspective to help others to be the best that they can be. Again, I just want to say thanks to all those who are here with us today. And before we get into the conversation itself, I'll just share just a little bit about Dr. Carter, and then I'll give him the opportunity to share more about himself with us. So, Dr. Carter have been in higher education for over 26 years, which is commendable when we constantly hear that we need more Black men in this space. So it's good when Black males, especially, see other Black men in education. That shows that we value education. He's also a former dean and vice president. And I can tell you, he's a youth advocate. I've seen him in action. I've seen him at events where, the program is directly involve youth and their potential and them being the best that they can be. So before we get into the conversation, so Dr. Carter, would you mind share more about yourself so the listeners can get a little bit more about who you are before we start this conversation today?
Absolutely, Dr. Cross. Again, I'm honored to be in this space, having this kind of conversation, because I do believe that information is wealth, and I do think that as much as we can, we need to spread our arms and spread that information,
Yes.
particularly around our youth. So, Um, I am Parris Carter. I have enjoyed, like Dr. Cross said, I've enjoyed 20, at this point, 27 years working at universities and colleges. Have enjoyed that time, have really gotten to meet wonderful people, make impact on young people and also adults, that come to our universities and may want to transition careers or just in a different space in their lives. And so it's been honorable work. It's been work that's also poured into me. Um, I started to, probably about somewhere around 5 to 7 years ago, just interest in other things. Not that higher education wasn't still serving me and providing that passion work, but the world is big and there's a lot of people out there that have need. And so if there's a way that I can use my, talents and expertise and God's given gifts to help others, I'm always trying to tap into that. So um, I'm still teaching at the university here in Ohio, but I'm also doing some consulting. I'm doing some coaching. And so those are just, ways that I'm spending my professional time. I joke with folks that I'm on a sabbatical in terms of, higher education administration. The landscape has changed so much, and I salute to those that are leading universities. It is really difficult work. I mean, especially during this time, it's difficult work, and so I just am looking at other ways to make things better for other folks. Now, the real important stuff. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a husband. I'm a mentor. I'm many things to others. So I have a beautiful wife, three beautiful children, 16, 15, and 12. And so spending time with them and being a part of their development is the work that I really, really love to do.
Man, thanks for sharing. As you said, you stepped away from education, but you haven't really stepped away because the adults need that experience that you have gained over the years. So, although you're consulting and coaching educators do need the development and the guidance and support
Absolutely.
as
Yeah.
well. But I just want to say thanks for being here. But I will acknowledge Dr. Brown for stopping by and sharing her thoughts. And
Oh,
two of
yeah.
the best educators in higher education.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pass it on to you, Dr. Carter. I'm working on it, but I want to say I appreciate Dr. Brown
Yeah.
for saying that because that also help us to continue working on ourselves
Mm,
so we can continue to be the best that we can be to serve those who we are entrusted to serve.
yeah.
So it's not that
Dr. Brown. Yeah, I want to give her a shout out.
that's right. It's not that we reach the top because there's no top when it comes to being an educator. We always have to be open to learn and to just gain as much as possible because a lot of people are counting on us as educators
Yeah.
especially, so it is important. So with that being said, I want to start with this question, which I've stated earlier. Our conversation will be around legacy builders and what we can do and what we need to do, especially as Black men, being that we have another generation looking up to us. And I like to say that the next generation should not have the same things that we are dealing with to deal with. They should have, yes, their own challenges, but we should, solve some of the problems, in our time, so they can have it much easier or better, not even much easier, but better.
Yeah.
As they can make more progress than we do. So my first question to you is, what does the term legacy mean to you, and how do you define it in your own life?
Wow. Legacy has become a really important part of my life. I'd say probably in the last 10 years, just being more conscious of, what you contribute and what you leave behind. Where I think in the earlier part of my career, it was more about my presence and what I was doing at that time. And, whatever circumstance I was in, that time may be chaotic, that time may be stagnant, that time may be evolving. But, when I had more conversations with my late grandfather, who was an amazing man, um, we would talk about, what are you building that is going to make it better once you leave for other people? And so I really adopted that in my work, in my personal life. I'm always present and try to be fully engaged in whatever I'm doing, but um, it is more important the things that I'm building or have a stretch or some kind of touch that it is in a better place than it was before. Before I was able to touch it. And so to me, that's what legacy is. And if we all, sort of put together our talent and our care, because that's a lot of it. It's just we got to care. A lot of us can do many things, but you really have to care. But if we can put that together on the domino board, and say we just want to build this thing, and it may not be forever. It may be 6 months. It may be a year that we're interacting with this thing. But let's make it better. If everybody was into that kind of work, I think we be at a better place. And so legacy is really important. My last appointment in higher education was the inaugural dean of the graduate program at Wiley University. It's a HBCU in Texas. Shout out to Wiley. Really enjoyed my time there. Growing as a university, went from college to university, and part of that was establishing graduate programs. Right, so started a master's in business, a master's in higher education, and a master's in criminal justice. I feel so good about my work there for that year because I left behind a legacy, like the graduate programs that never existed before at that institution. So I wasn't so concerned with, you know, would I do something beyond the year contract? Would I do? No, I'm going to build this, help the university build this small thing, and you walk away. So, you got hundreds of people that may not had opportunity for graduate work, that now do and can do it at an HBCU. And so that's just an example that is really important for me.
I really like what you stated about what are you doing to build something or make where you are better. And I think, as you mentioned, if we approach wherever we are with that mindset, things will always be better
Yeah,
because we're going in with that mindset, with that desire, with that conviction that our responsibility in this space is to make things better. As you stated, wherever we are, we may not be there forever, but we should always give our best where we are. And I like how you mentioned about care. Um, as you stated, if we could all show up and let the people know that we care,
yeah,
things will be better. And that is one thing I strongly believe that is one thing you cannot really hide. If you really care, the people gonna know.
that's right.
Especially the students, they're gonna know.
That's right.
They're gonna know if you care or not, and it's
Yeah.
important. Especially when we want things to be better, we have to let those around us, especially those who we are entrusted to serve,
Hmm.
know that we care. But it's important that we make the place better whenever we enter that space. I think that is really important. That is something that we all need to take away as we go forward. Wherever we are, we should make it better, give our best effort to make things better. So, my next question to you is, what pivotal moment in your life shaped your mindset about building a legacy? I know you mentioned when you spoke to your grandfather, he helped you to develop that mindset of making things better. But is there any other experience, or if you don't mind, you could expound on that experience and how it helped you to show up in the spaces that you are?
Sure. I think, to your point of the importance of just doing the best you can when you're in that space. That goes back to my father's teaching. Go out there in the yard, and I never, I'll never forget some of the examples. If I need you to pick up this dog poop in the yard, just do it well. Like, do it well so I don't have to come back and get on you and pull you back and say, hey, you missed this. Just do it well. So everything, you may not have the biggest brains, and you may not have all the innovative thoughts, but have a reputation of doing things really well. And so that does go back to my father. And I think the legacy piece of doing something well, and whatever amount of time you're there, you may leave, but just, feel good that you added value to that thing. Um, I do think that it came probably more apparent to me um, while I was at Howard University. I was working as the associate vice president for student affairs, and really enjoyed, my time at Howard. My supervisor, Ken Holmes, um, served under President Wayne A.I. Frederick. I mean, had a really good experience, but there was a lot of transition, and specifically in student affairs. Howard has a rich history and robust campus, and lots of pride and vibrant campus. But there hadn't been a real student affairs kind of operation where students were being supported. Those students that had a little different need knew where to go. Academic affairs, would partner with us, and so all this was kind of new ways to operate. And because, as you know, new things sometimes can be disruptive,
Correct.
especially with institutions that have really strong history. Um, and so I understood that, okay, there's going to be things that I am charged with changing, transitioning, maybe a first for the institution, and definitely a first for student affairs. And it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be always welcomed by everyone. And I think that was the time that just there was an acknowledgement that, yeah, there may be work here that I'm going to do that's great for the institution moving forward, but it may be, so disruptive that my time, may not be, as long as maybe one would think. And I was good with that. I was good with that, disrupting at times, because I know that this thing is better for students' experience for the long term. But we get into these administrative, political, territorial, kinds of things, and so I was good with that, and I didn't get pushed out, or I left on good terms, and had a great experience. But I did realize that my legacy in this role is just more important for me. It's more important.
Well, as you stated that, there would be challenges at times and sometimes pushback when it comes to you being you and want to do the things that you feel compelled to do to make a difference. Because, one thing that I've heard that, sometimes you may be dealing with people who don't understand the way that you make your impact. And
Hmm.
it doesn't mean your impact is wrong. It may not be fitting in that moment
Right.
or that environment. And one thing that one of my mentors said to me, Dr. Kimbrough, he said, wherever you go, show up as yourself.
Yeah.
Be the best you in the environment that you're in, because you're always representing yourself, despite how those around you may receive you. It's not that you're going there to be disruptive, but it's always great to always represent yourself in the best way possible, because that's also a part of your legacy.
Yeah.
It's not how long you are there, because some people can be in spaces for 5, 10, 15 years, and you go and be in that space for a couple months and still make a greater impact.
Yeah.
Because that's just what it's about. You go with an intention to make a difference,
Yeah.
and your difference can be more pronounced than others who may have been in the space, because sometimes be in a space for a long time, you get complacent, you get comfortable.
Yeah.
And when it comes to legacy, you cannot be complacent. You cannot get comfortable, because you should be with the mindset to make a difference.
Yeah.
That means you have to even challenge yourself in moments so you can, operate on the best. in the best way possible.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is important. You were about to say something else.
Just acknowledging your mentor, Dr. Kimbrough. I've always admired him as a leader and as a thought, a thought leader, and
Yeah.
yeah, he's dope.
Oh yeah, man. Just being in his presence alone will challenge you because you know what he stands for. You know his work ethic. You know the dedication that he have put into the work that he's doing. And I glad when I went to Georgia and met him. Actually, when I went to Georgia, someone said, if you're going to be in education and don't connect with um, then Dr. Kimbrough, you're doing yourself a disservice. So as soon as I got off the phone, I went over by Clark, and so luckily he was there in his office, and we had a great conversation. And I can tell you that in that moment, I know that what, I need to connect with this brother, because for myself, I need to learn that space,
Yeah.
about what to do and what is expected, and how to challenge the
Yeah.
status quo.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's good.
that's right. So my next question to you is, how can Black men shift from a survival mindset to a legacy building mindset?
Mm. Well, I think the more we map out our trajectory, and not that it doesn't vary, and we may go off the path a little bit, but I think the more and more we map that out, where we want to be, and then what are the action steps to get us there, and then if we get knocked down, it's okay because we still got a plan. We still kind of know what we need to do, and then we've created some support structures around us, which we historically don't do well.
Correct.
So I'm glad that we're having more conversations about the kind of support that we as Black men need these days, which is good. So I think the more we sort of have a strategic kind of plan about ourselves and where we want to be, it helps us get out of the survival mode. But so many times we're just kind of running, and I've been there too in my life. You just kind of running by the edge of your seat. You don't really have a plan. You're going after this thing this year, and then you're going after this thing this year because it's something you think temporarily is gonna kind of map out your journey to your success and whatever that means for you. So I think that's part of it. Just doing some more planning, and that's when mentors become so important for us, to sit down and challenge us with mapping out a plan, just a 3 to 5 year plan. As if you're a college student and you got a mentor, he or she should be mapping out a 3 to 5 year plan. If you're in high school, same thing. Because it kind of it'll help eliminate this desperate way of thinking. Um, I also think that so many times the conversation about self-esteem and confidence and things like that don't happen with men, you know, but there's so many of us that have insecurities. There's so many of us that lack confidence. And so again, we're just kind of swimming out here, not even swimming a lot of times, just doggy paddling, trying not to drown, where we need to be in touch with what it takes for us to feel good about what we're doing. And if we have mapped out a plan but have fallen short, because we had that confidence, we're okay. We have some persistence about us. We're okay. We're resilient. We're okay. But a lot of these things aren't in order for us. Like internally, they're not in order for us. And so it does kind of produce this. I'm walking outside each day and I don't know what is what. I don't know what's in my pocket. I don't know how I'm going to get something in my pocket. I don't know My relationships are unstable. I don't know how these people are going to treat me when I go to the store. All of that. And it is a survival kind of thing where I just think we got to spend more time with ourselves, understanding what we need and exercises that help us with our own esteem and confidence. And then I think spending more time planning. Every young black man has, I'm not, let me take young out of the picture. Every black man needs a mentor.
Correct.
Every black man needs a mentor to help design, that plan and kind of hold you accountable for it.
Man, that is, we could have a conversation about the support piece in itself alone,
Oh yeah.
because, we find it very difficult to ask for support. And I find that it's not just difficult, but we have been conditioned to not ask for support, because not only because we are conditioned to think asking for support is weakness, but some of us have seen um, their peers or even family members being let down by other people. So
Hmm.
sometimes it's their own experience where they have been let down by others. So they find it difficult to trust others to ask for support because one
Yeah.
day it's going to be the same experience. And as you mentioned, which is really important, and it is something that we must do, and that is mentoring the next generation, or even mentoring our own peers. As you mentioned, it's not about young. It's
Right.
about us,
Right.
because there are some of us as adults who are still not confident in who we are
Hmm.
as grown adults. And it's the same thing. It's because of the conditioned belief, our experience, or
Hmm.
what we have been told over and over. And I also think that the distrust becomes a part of the process of not asking for support. As you mentioned,
Yeah.
I wonder how these relationships are going to treat me. Wonder
Yeah.
if they're going to respond to me in a more favorable way. And that has to change for us to really make the progress that we are capable of making.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned that, we are resilient, we are creative, we have all the tools to be extraordinary. But sometimes we fall so short of being extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because one, we don't have the support, we don't have the mentorship. And I think, once we get to the point of overcoming some of those challenges, we have to be intentional and pulling others up. We cannot only say lift as we climb, we have to be doing the lifting
Doing the
as we
lifting.
climb.
Yeah.
Because I think that is really important, especially if we move from the survival mindset, because we're not going to just overcome those challenges without some guidance or support, getting past those hurdles. So it's important, and I'm really glad that you mentioned it, because it is a need within our community, but we have to be intentional about it. And I like to say, if it doesn't matter how talented we are, because it's not about how good we are or what we are capable of doing, because
Hmm.
we can use athletes for an example. No matter how talented they are, they still have coaches, they
Right.
still have support teams, so they can be great
Yeah.
and fulfill their full capability. So it's the same thing for us, and it's something that we have to get into and be very intentional about. So I'm really glad that you mentioned it. And for those who are here and are in the position, and the position doesn't mean we have to be in a financial situation to help
No.
financially. It could be emotionally. It could be, spiritually and stuff like that. So it's to find that space or where we develop strength to make sure we help the next generation. But I'm really glad that you mentioned that, and I have a lot more questions. So I'm going to see, how to get through most of these questions. So my next question to you is: what barriers do you think Black men face when it comes to creating generational wealth and stability.
Well, that second part, the stability. Without stability, you can't create generational wealth.
Correct.
Without access to opportunities, without the knowledge of how do you even do it, because black folks are already behind historically. The wealth gap is crazy. So we don't, as a collective,
Correct.
there are certainly examples of folks that have learned what it is to build wealth, but collectively we don't have the information to know how to start building a foundation to create wealth. And so there's nothing to pass down. There's no information to pass down. Um, and the generation, our parents, for some, their grandparents, um, some did really well of sort of earning the middle class, and in some cases upward middle class, but because it was a very new thing, they didn't do a good job of passing it down. And that's because they were still just preaching and pushing education, which I'm not arguing with that. But probably if we could redo it again, we would do more time on investment, time on entrepreneurship, time. See, all of this has really just become kind of a focus in the last 15, 20 years. But I think that we kind of missed some opportunities there. And so right now we're just always playing catch up. We're just, if you look at the segregation of real estate, and real estate being the number one industry to produce wealth,
Correct.
and we are like 50 years behind other folks. And so we've got to uh, be in overdrive with a concept that we don't even fully understand. And so, a lot of it is, working 9 to 5, as unless you're in neuroscience or own a hospital, and you're not going to build wealth that way. You're working to live, and you might, want a certain lifestyle. So you get to live that because you have a high paying job, but you're not building wealth. And so a lot of it is mindset. Like, is it more important to live conservatively, but invest and save so that you can start to pass that down, to your children and your grandchildren, which will, in a sense, start to build some wealth.
Correct.
Um, but because of the mentality is so and this is certainly not a conversation around systematic racism, and I don't want this to turn into that, but we have to readjust our mindset, as black folks living in America. Just our community has to do that collectively,
Correct.
or we're never going to be able to build wealth.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As you mentioned, we can't to continue to blame the system or depend on the system.
Right.
Um, we have to find a way to create around the system.
Yeah.
If something was not created for you, which is still going to be in place, we have to find different avenues, and which is going to come through a form of education, a form of mentorship, and a form of supporting each other.
Yeah.
Because again, if we're not supporting each other, it's going to be difficult to build wealth or to get into positions to even start building
Yeah.
wealth. But as you mentioned, if you're doing 9 to 5, it's going to be difficult. But as you stated, the conversation is different today than maybe 20 years ago for us.
Yeah.
The new generation, I think, are this current generation. They're in a good position to change their trajectory. Once we do our due diligence, by exposing them, because for some of us, the most we will be able to do is expose them to what will help to change their life, because we may not be in the position from a wealth standpoint to pass down generational wealth to them, but we can at least expose them to what can provide them that avenue to create something better for generations to come. But I
Yeah.
really appreciate your perspective. But I'm going to go into my next question, which is, how has mentorship played a role in your journey, and why is it important for building strong legacy?
Mm. Mentorship. Um, this was I joke with friends, and when I'm in conversations like this, I was mentoring young men that look like me before I probably should have. People were entrusting me, and with the lives of young men, really, really young men. When I was a young man, probably uh, still finding my own way. And I'm talking, I can remember at age 13, 14, 15, going to events with my father who was active in the community, 100 Black Men. He's part of the greatest fraternity in the world, which I am a legacy member, Kappa Alpha Psi. So my dad was really into the community all the time, and he would take me with him. Go over here. Let's talk to these young men. Let's play basketball with them. Let's talk to them about the importance of education. And I wasn't even doing well in school sometimes, but he exposed me to that at an early age. So I understood the value even before mentorship became, this concept and sort of this buzzword. Um, and so I've seen the benefits. I've seen the benefits, and I challenge every man should be mentoring at least two young men, at least two young men. Sponsor, mentorship, building some kind of personal relationship. That is my charge. But for me, also, and what I have needed in mentorship, and I have uh, what I would consider good, strong, very active mentors, two of them. And these are people I can, I'm up for a role. I remember a VP role I was a finalist for, and they wanted a presentation on kind of this budget analysis and building programs in this division. I went right to my mentor, who had served in executive positions in higher education, and he helped me kind of construct the entire presentation, and helped me through, once I had received an offer, helped me through the negotiation process. It was first time at a vice president level, and negotiations look different at that level, and so it's just critically important. Critically important, young men that need your guidance as a mentor for their first serious relationship. you know I'm thinking about asking her to marry me. I don't have where I would like to be financially. I'm still transitioning with my job. What should I do? And because we have been through these things, or know other men that have, we're supposed to share that kind of guidance. So to me, that is part of legacy. I mean, that's part of, and that's one of the things that I have enjoyed so much about my time at HBCUs, because I have daily access to these young men that are in need. I mean, I've enjoyed my time at other institutions as well, but there has been a very specific joy that I've had with mentoring, and I could probably rattle off 20 young men that I'm still in touch with today. Not daily, but several of them we check in monthly. Okay, I've just been appointed to my first principalship,
Wow.
but I'm struggling because they want me to kind of clean house, and they've got some trouble employees. Dean, a lot of my former students still call me Dean. How do I navigate that? Like, I want the position, but I know immediately I'm going in and I'm dealing with unions, and I'm dealing with employees that need to be transitioned. And they just need to talk through those things. So, if I had to pinpoint the one thing that I absolutely love doing without compensation, recognition, any of that, is mentorship.
Yeah, I think that it is just important. As you mentioned, there are some things that you're going to need advice on. And again, advice doesn't matter how talented you are or how naturally gifted you are. You're still going to be in spaces where you need someone to tell you how to navigate it
Yeah.
because they have walked the path before.
Hmm.
And I think that is important. As you mentioned, as Black men, I think we should make sure we are helping someone um, navigate their journey.
Hmm.
And again, it's not always because we have been successful in everything that we do, but sometimes, we can tell them what not to do because this is what I've done and I've failed at it.
Yeah.
So it's important, that we provide the guidance as much as possible to the next generation.
Hmm.
And I think, as you mentioned about, mentorship and the Black men who still reach out to you, what advice would you give to young Black men about preparing for long term success?
Surround yourself with people that add value instead of taking away. I think we do that a lot as young, early in our lives. We're around people we like, and they pull from us a lot of times more than we are gaining from. So I think once you sort of find your path, you've designed a plan, you can at least see your trajectory. I think you got to surround yourself with people that are going to help get you there. And
Yes.
I'm never an advocate of leaving friends behind. I think there's a place for friends, and
Yep.
yeah, but you've got to surround yourself with people that are going to continue to help you excel, and question your vision and challenge you, because that's a good thing. The iron sharpens iron is a real thing. You
Correct.
you get yourself around other hungry, sharp people, you are naturally going to be sharper. So I think that's important. Um, I would say that have your plan, but also have contingencies. Just what is, you're in your center lane, but if you go a little left, go a little right, what do those look like without you losing ground? What do they look like? So I think those can still get them there, some contingencies, because you know how things, life will blow you off to the left or the right. Continuing to read, continuing to understand what it means. I don't just say, I plan to be a venture capitalist. I'm going to go and get my MBA. I am going to start a software company for pretty cheap, or an app. I'm going to start an app. You have to continue to read about that industry and what that means for your pursuit. Don't just say, yeah, here's my dream. I'm going to work really hard and get there. You gotta have some. You gotta understand the discipline around it, so that your action plan makes sense with whatever that industry is calling for. So those are just a few nuggets that I would continue to talk to young people about getting where they want to be in terms of success.
As you mentioned, surround yourself with people who add value. I remember my first semester at Lincoln, there was a guy who came on campus and said, if you are the smartest person in your group, you're in the wrong group. And you are going to be like the
Yeah.
five closest people to you. So if you are aiming to be your best, and those around you, your friends, are not doing the same, they may pull you away from your aspiration. And they said the negative is always stronger than the positive. And
Yeah.
so back to what you have stated, surround yourself with people who add value, which is really, really important because we're going to pick up on those closest to us.
Yeah.
Again, they said the negative is always stronger than the positive. So despite you having the aspiration, and you have seen this, being in the school setting, some students come look like they're going to do very well, and they end up with the wrong group of friends,
Oh, absolutely.
and they end up going down on the wrong path just because of the people they surround themselves with. And that goes for us too as adults. We have to surround ourselves with people who want to grow, who want more, who want to make a difference, because we are going to pick up on the habits. But I really appreciate that perspective. But also, as you mentioned, that one thing that we don't do well as men, maybe it's changing, but I haven't seen no research saying it, and that is read. We need to read more. I know we do read as Black men, and I've seen a lot more programs recently started where Black men now are reading to young kids.
Yeah.
Not only the Black boys are seeing it, but it's also changing the perception that even young girls may have of Black men, because whatever is out there that we don't do, it's not only we as Black men who are seeing it, everyone is seeing it. So when we're in those spaces, reading these books to kids, or even volunteering these schools, now the perception and maybe misconceptions can change. But reading is really important, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that, especially when we're thinking about long-term success. My next question to you is: how do you balance personal success with making an impact on your community?
Hmm. I think I've been fortunate, working in a service field where at the core of education is to help others, right? That's at the core of education, to teach others, to help others get concepts that will, improve their pathways. So I've been fortunate, 27 years of doing that work. Um, I was a basketball coach, for 10 years and, coached young men and loved that. Again, just another opportunity to pour in and teach, pour in and teach. So the balance has probably been a little easier for me than most because it's, my life is spent with caring for others and teaching others and supporting others. So the balance is I don't always have it figured out, you know. If you're, I always like to say, seesaw. I try to, keep it level on most days, but I certainly, tip one way or the other from time to time. But part of my desire to start, um, to kind of go off on my own and use my own talent and expertise um, was because I believe I have a knack for assisting others, improving their processes, creating efficiency in their work. I can see sort of global issues and help, people come up with, um, solutions to those, those challenges. And so I don't have to do that for an organization, So, creating that balance where I'm doing more of that work on my own, and I get to spend time with, the people I love, and have a little more flexibility to do the things in the community to support others. And so that's the balance that I'm always, looking for. I think I've had a pretty good measure of balance, but I want to be in that area. I want to be awesome. I want every area of my life to have balance, because I believe that's how we have a strong mental state, is when there's balance. Like, if you think about it, when things are tipping one way or the other, um, it's hard for our minds to be settled, and so I know certain professional spaces do that for folks, just throw you off because you're working like crazy, you're dealing with politics, you're underpaid but expected to produce all this, and a lot of times we're just walking around unbalanced,
Right.
and so that's my everyday, I'm searching for balance. Yeah.
But as I was listening to you, being that you're on that path of higher education, did you knew early that that's what you want to do? And what really inspired you to, go on that path of education?
Well, my choice to go into higher ed was basically because of my experience as an undergraduate student, and not really being focused, and not having a path. Things that we're talking about, that we've talked about for the last 30 minutes, is not really having a path. I wasn't a strong student, and so I was just kind of out there, and connected with the student affairs office, at Wright State University. Shout out to Kathy Murray, Bill Shepard, Ron Heyer, Pam Davis, just some amazing people, and help me find a path. Like, okay, you can use your experience. This is a field that helps those students that are like you, just need some guidance, need some support, and so that's what led me into the field. um, and I knew probably at year 15, 17, that I didn't aspire to be a college president, and so the next move for me would be, okay, well, I could take all this experience and maybe help other higher ed professionals and presidents and boards, operate a little better, put together retention models at work. How can you use this data to make your student experience better? And so I remember I stood in an interview somewhere around 2013, 2012, 2013, and I was asked, what is your 10-year plan? And I was like, well, eventually I'd like to be a consultant and come back and help you all run your institutions better.
Right.
Yeah. And those colleagues reminded me of that, so it has been part of the plan for quite some time.
Well, gaining the experience and the insight, and sometimes to see the challenge, sometimes to provide the solutions, sometimes you have to step away to provide that value, because whilst in there, you have to deal with maybe too many loopholes to provide a solution that will work
Yeah.
uh, best.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that perspective. But I have a couple more questions. I may not get to the end of the questions for today, but that means we will have future conversation, which I'll add to the questions that I do have. But my next question to you is: in what ways do you believe? Black men can take ownership of their narratives to reshape how society view them, how society view us. How can we take ownership of our narratives so we can change how society view us?
I talk about the concept of cool posing. Psychologists and authors, Majors and Bilson. I can't think of their first names, but their last names Majors and Bilson. They wrote a book, Cool Posing. It talked about the mask that black men wear, just in our society, the mask that we put on each day, um, because there's not a level of comfort with us being our authentic selves in the world, right? You go into, if you're in a corporate space, if you're in a neighborhood where maybe you're one of only, all these scenarios black men find themselves in, and either because of stereotyping or like Dr. Naeem Akbar put it, black men suffer the brunt of America's racist baggage. Um, he was also a psychologist, just all those things that just weigh on us, so we just wear these masks. And how unhealthy are these masks that we wear? And I think they have contributed to the rise in mental health issues that some of us have had because of these masks. And this isn't, only something that black men have experienced. It's just that's where, a lot of my research and my work has been around black men. So I think that's the first step, is we've got to release these masks. We've got to feel good about who we are, and in all its authenticity, walk into every room in that way. Like, yeah, no, I'm not trying to fit a European model. I am African. I am a black man, and this is what I bring. And I'm brilliant. So I got a lot to contribute to whatever. I can solve problems. I can work well with others. I have some charisma, so I can make the place fun. Like, I can do all these things and be good with that. And I think some of that has started to change the narrative in some spaces, but we still have some of the, some of the other stereotypes, and then some data. Frankly, some hard data that is not in our favor. Around, fatherless homes, around the lack of education, graduation rates, and college degree, compared to other. We certainly have a lot of that as well. But I think those of us that have the opportunity to create narratives, we should be doing that boldly. Like, boldly. I always enjoyed, being in spaces where people were looking at me as the representation of all black folks. And sometimes that can be frustrating. We've all had those experiences. Like, what do you think? Or what do you. I always embrace those because I took that opportunity to say, you know what? If everybody walks away thinking, okay, that's black people right there, I I'm good with that.
Correct.
If you want to be that simple and sort of basing everything in a monolithic way, like, okay, well, use me. Yeah, I'm the best and the brightest. Yes, use me. So I just embrace those spaces, but I think that will help, sort of, rewrite the narrative. And I think a lot of it is happening, but man, it's so much more work to do.
Oh yeah, that is important. As just to touch on a few things that you have mentioned. The mask that we wear. Again, it's part of how we have been conditioned to see ourselves and how we, been conditioned to show up. But as you mentioned, that we need to show up in our excellence, that which we are, and feel comfortable and unapologetic about it because we are that great. So we need to stop going in spaces thinking that we don't belong when we have worked very hard.
Mhm.
to be in those spaces, because imposter syndrome still affect us as
Oh,
Black men.
it's
So
huge.
we have to overcome, those limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
and realize that we are great and we do belong in those spaces. So my final question to you, because we're on the top of the hour. Man, the
It's
time
gone
went by.
quickly.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it went by so fast. But even before I ask that question, where can the listeners find you, and just to learn more about what you're doing, so you can share with them your knowledge and expertise?
Sure. Simply LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn and has my contact information there. Um, I'm working on. Uh, I launched personal leadership and care consulting, PLC consulting, in October of 2024, and so I'm still building out. My my website and all those good things, but certainly excited for folks to network and love meeting new people. So LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you. And I will have it somewhere in the description, so they can reach out to you later on, even after this conversation. So, my final question to you is, what actionable steps Black men can take today to start building lasting legacy?
Hmm. Presence, first and foremost, just presence. Like I see you everywhere. You're in Dayton at my brother's keeper. We have to come out. If you Even if you don't have a child, a son, you hear about something, you come out. um, I think health is huge. I think the better our bodies are connect to our minds and our spirits, and we can serve better,
Correct.
right? And we have the energy. A lot of, I'll say, north of 50 men, they burned out, and they're not in shape to kind of chase around these young men. A lot of that is just our health,
Correct.
right? um I think more selflessness. I know you're tired. I know you're working hard. I know you're chasing after bags. You've got to embrace some young men. I don't know how you do it in your communities, maybe church. If you're in a fraternity, get active. Like, you've got to connect with these young men. I mean, that's just critical. So visibility, working on your health, and making it a priority to truly activate these communities of young men. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that would.
giving back is important, and showing up is important. And in showing up and in giving back, as you mentioned, and this is something that we can have a whole day conversation around, and that's our health. It's important because it seems as if we don't take care of our health as much as we should, but it's important, and that is a conversation that we can all have when it comes to us as Black men. But Dr. Carter, the time went by so fast.
Mhm.
I just want to say thank you for being here on the Black Male Impact, as we continue to inspire positive change.
I am honored, and thank you again, Dr. Cross. Great conversation.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you here. And for the listeners who are still here with us, thank you for being here as we continue to bring guests that we believe will share insights and perspective, knowledge and experience with all of us that we can apply as we move forward on our journey. Again, thank you for being here with us as we continue on this journey to make a positive impact.